imposing taxes against the hustlers whom you swore to protect. Time is coming that we are going to lead a serious revolution against your government, and we are going to make sure that we get you out of that office.
Tunakufa, hatuwezi afford kula mara tatu kwa siku bwana. Hatukuli mara tatu.
Our parents were scared of them. We are not scared.
If you continue
Why are Kenyan youth protesting again? 1 year later, Kenyan youths have returned to the streets across the country in overwhelming crowds, charging and chanting, "Ruto must go," with intense march power and strong spirit. They call it the Gen Z Revolt. But why are youths of Kenya back on the streets where their blood spilled exactly 1 year ago? Why have they taken over their roads protesting with so much force, more than they did in the same period in 2024? We will find out. Since January 25th, 2025, news from Kenya has taken over the media space, especially the social media. It is a new wave of rage sweeping through the East African nation and grabbing global attention. Kenyan youths are back on the streets, protesting forcefully and furiously. Their protest is turning into a nightmare for the Kenyan ruling elites. Of course, it is a monster they made. According to the youths, it is an anniversary protest, a peaceful demonstration staged to salute their fellow compatriots murdered in last year's protest. However, what has happened in Kenya since January 25th is more than a demonstration to remember fallen heroes. It is a new generation revolution against bad governance. In the revolt, the youths are calling for President William Ruto to resign and vacate the presidency. Here is how it all started. Ruto won Kenya's presidential election that was held on August 9th, 2022 by a margin of 50.5% of the entire votes cast. That was a pretty good margin, and it showed his popularity amongst Kenyan voters, especially the youths, who made up more than 75% of the population. The youths loved him. They showed that love by campaigning for him vigorously. Even without collecting a dime, they rooted for him free of charge. How was he able to charm the youths and win their hearts? You see, Ruto has been a smart politician. Yes, he had a humble beginning. He was born into poverty. His parents couldn't even afford his education. When he was a teenager, he hawked to support his family to feed. In fact, he revealed that the first time he got a pair of shoes, he was 15 years. Ruto's story is pretty known, and it is one that many Kenyans could relate to because most of the people are poor. Ruto was smart to use his background to write his political story and build a political philosophy that people could easily identify with. He called it the Hustler Nation.
Ati mahasla ni watu watalete.
Ruto identified poor Kenyans, who made up the majority of the population, as hustlers like him, and he sold them hopes of a better living condition. Under Uhuru Kenyatta, the economy was bad, hardship was increasing, and Kenyans yearned for a savior. Ruto presented himself as that savior. He won election and took over power. Kenya had high hopes and genuinely believed their lives would be better under a Ruto presidency. Unfortunately, the first 2 years of Ruto presidency dashed their hopes. Unemployment among youths grew to 67%. Brutality became rampant and rule of law suffered neglect. Kenyans saw themselves going backwards rather than progressing. Life became brutal, hard and short for the people. It meant just one thing: Ruto has failed. President Ruto saw the country fast declining and things getting worse, yet he remained unbothered. Instead, he introduced an anti-people tax law which imposed high taxes on poor Kenyans. It was the last straw that broke the camel's back. Kenyan youths wouldn't let that happen, and the best way to tell Ruto and his government enough is enough was to mobilize and hit the streets in large numbers. This was the anti-tax law protest of June 25th, 2024. The protest last year was indeed a tragic civic movie. Kenyan Gen Zs acted a show that shook the Kenyan political theater. Kenyan political actors watched like helpless spectators. The youths registered their outright rejection of the outrageous tax law. Many of them questioned, why would President Ruto, who once claimed to love the poor, raise taxes at a crazily high rate when economic conditions are woeful and hardship is biting the people harder? Well, such a question begs for logic and empathy from President Ruto. But unfortunately, not too many African leaders consult their brains or listen to their conscience. The protesters demanded immediate withdrawal of the tax law and that Ruto's government should improve governance. But Ruto just didn't pay attention. The more President Ruto refused to address the demands of the protesters, the more the protests increased with intensity and force. It didn't take long. The youths marched to parliament, chased out the lawmakers, and occupied the place. Ruto responded by unleashing the police on the protesters, and the police went on full-scale attack. The result was brutal clashes between the protesters and the police, and many fatalities were recorded. In the few days the protest lasted, 60 innocent Kenyans amongst the protesters died, and 20 more went missing. The protesters were adamant. They refused to stop until Ruto and his government agreed to their demands. Eventually, Ruto withdrew the tax law. He equally made other moves like pushing for an end to police brutality and appointing some key opposition leaders into his cabinet. He called it Government of National Unity. Those actions from Ruto stopped the protest. Kenyan youths returned to their homes, hoping on the assurances from President Ruto. But how did things turn out afterwards? Ruto withdrew the useless anti-people tax bill but refused to agree to the calls on him to resign. He was adamant and unrepentant still in doing the wrong things. The economy continued to get even worse, youth's unemployment rates grew even more, and police brutality festered even faster. And it was just a matter of time before Kenyan youths returned to the streets in bigger crowds. The current protest is a result of the failure of Ruto's government to address the concerns that fueled the first protest, particularly police brutality. After the protest of 2024, the police didn't learn their lessons. They went about harassing citizens and silencing opposition voices to the government. Youths were actual victims of brutality. Some were illegally arrested and locked up in jail without trial. In fact, in May 2025, a young man identified as Albert Ojwang died in police custody. Albert, who had just clocked 31 years before his unfortunate death, was a young man with promising future. He doubled his hustle as a blogger and a teacher just to survive. He was arrested and locked up for merely criticizing a senior police officer on his social media handle and died from torture in police custody. While the police tried to cover up, the news leaked a few days later. Immediately it went viral, it got backlash from the people, and some youths began to mobilize to protest the murder. The police quickly put up a fake trial. They arrested 6 people in connection with Albert's death and charged them with murder. but it looked nothing more than an insincere move to calm the already angered public. What is more interesting, the 6 accused persons pleaded not guilty to the charges, and that was the end. No one has been punished and justice has not been served. The outrage against Albert's murder had yet to die down when another innocent young man fell victim to police brutality. It happened while some youths were protesting Albert's death. A police officer who joined the anti-protest team shot at the crowd. His bullet hit one of the protesters named Boniface Kariuki. He fell to the bullet and lost breath. This threw the crowd into deep anger and inflamed the rhythm of their wrath. In no mean time, more youths joined the protest and it spread across other cities of Kenya. So, it becomes obvious that the Kenyan police helped to radicalize the current protests. Now, the protest has transitioned into a fierce fight for survival for the Kenyan youths. They want the economy to work so that they can have a job. They want the economy to work so that they can have a job. They want police harassment to end so that they can move and live freely. But instead, the government is taking their lives from them. Rather than listen to the protesters, Ruto's government is applying force. Clashes between authorities and the protesters have turned bloody. Death tolls keep rising. 2 people have been reported dead and dozens others injured. But the more the government attacked them, the more they grew in number and become stubborn. Major streets in Nairobi have been taken over by the ever-growing crowds and things are rapidly falling apart in Kenya. Ruto, who equally suffers from the usual sit-tight syndrome of African leaders, is refusing to agree to the only demand of Kenyan youths in the ongoing anniversary protest, which is Ruto Must Go. To see our next insightful video, subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications. Help share this video to others.
Frilife Media.